And joining us in studio is Jonas Mahedi, political analyst, rather on the phone. Mlondi Mkhize is an ANC Youth League spokesperson. He joins us from Durban on the line. And Thabo Mutle is ANC Youth League NEC member. Wellington Mkhize is from the African Business Leaders Forum. Good evening to you, gentlemen. Just excuse the scratchiness of the voice. It was freezing cold in Nasrec for the past 7 days, but good to have you. Just to reflect also on President Jacob Zuma being able to rise above the temptation of being caught up in the factions and sideshows of the policy conference, sticking to the business of the day. What's your observations, Wellington?
Firstly, good evening to everyone. Good evening to you, and thank you for the opportunity. For me, it's done a very correct thing. He's shown leadership. He's been Solomonic, if I may say.
Having that wisdom.
Rather have a living baby other than two halves of dead babies. So for me, it's a very good move, and it will do him well in terms of history when things goes down to history and what was the last act. So the last act is very good, and I think South Africans must not understand it as a political move, but it is the right thing to do.
And I mean, we've seen, and as to be expected, because it's not a homogenous group, people will differ, that there have been some who oppose the proposal of a power sharing, but nonetheless, just the gesture, the demeanor of the president in saying unity is paramount above all our personal differences. Thabo, your view on this, as the ANC Youth League NEC member?
In the ANC, there's never been anything of that nature called, any concept called power sharing. But the ANC has got its own values. On top of that, we always say and emphasize that unity is of sacrosanct in the ANC. So on the closing address, President emphasized much on that point, that it is very important that we should rise above factional battles in the best interest of the African National Congress, because there is many more battles ahead of us. So we can't be inwards looking, continue to be factional and be divided, whilst the world and the country, most importantly, needs the ANC to move this country forward. Therefore, it is on that basis that the president has called for maximum unity and made proposals to delegates and branches to go and consider a process that will ensure that the ANC remains united going forward.
But the timing, though, I mean, until December with the elective conference, is there adequate time to persuade, to lobby, and to bring those that may be disheartened, disillusioned about the party to say, this is the way we're going? We're essentially renewing, restoring, rejuvenating the movement as a united force. So, Wellington, what's your view?
I think the timing is still fine. We've got the media as we're discussing it now. Most people are watching this show, and people are listening. Everyone is listening. Everyone is watching. So there is time, and for me, the move that he has taken is necessary, and it is applauded by everyone across the board, because we all need a living ANC. There's no two ways about it. A dead ANC is a dead South Africa.
You know, earlier we had Oliver Dixon, he is a social political commentator, saying that, you know, the young people are 66% of what will form the largest voter base come 2019, and that there isn't necessarily a focus seemingly to zoom into this cohort and try and provide some form of leadership, access to opportunity, and that President Jacob Zuma's leadership in terms of unity, that's good and well, but it's the representation of young people that is of concern. Thabo, your view?
We have debated that matter in the conference to say it can't be correct whilst the society is getting younger and younger, and the ANC is being led by the old guard only. To some extent, we have persuaded the ANC to accept 40%. That will mean going to the national conference after a serious lobbying and reaching consensus with branches of the ANC, that the reflection of the NEC that will be elected in December must reflect that 40% of young people. And we are also persuading the ANC to modernize so that it can appeal to younger generation. We can't do things in the olden ways whilst the society is getting younger and younger. And also we need to be technological. The ANC has agreed that it will introduce a new membership system which will be much easier for young people to access. And to some extent, it has taken a positive decision to introduce online political education, where young people will be able to, without even going to a branch meeting, listening to a commissar, you can go online and be politically conscious, going through those political subjects that are online.
Yeah. Do you think that he basically had no choice in the matter because, as you were saying, that a divided ANC would mean instability in the country, and that this was the best possible compromise to unite the ANC without necessarily falling towards or leaning towards any particular faction?
It's not necessarily a compromise. The unity of the organization, it is important. Therefore, it will take matured leaders to understand that for the organization to be united, as individuals, they must compromise in the best interest of the organization, because majority of people in this country, they've got nowhere to go. Their aspiration are in the African National Congress. It is the only organization that carries the aspiration of our people. It is the only organization that has got pro-poor policies. Therefore, it is important that the ANC must emerge united so that it can continue to lead. Because if we are not united and fighting amongst ourselves, we are killing the organization that does not even belong to us. It belongs to the people of this country.
But the question is it unity at all costs, even when there is disagreement? Do you have to have the guarantee of consensus when adopting policy or even implementing that policy? Because it's one thing to have a united front, but when it matters the most, when people's lives are supposed to be materially changed and impacted, we then see a differing of personalities or even ideologies, Sir Wellington.
Look, there is not even a loss, if I may correct that. It's not a decision that is taken against all loss. It's a gain. For me, for the record, I'm not politically involved. I'm a mentor and a coach together with the APLF. So a person like me who's not hands-on involved applauds such a decision. There's no loss. The loss is if one party wins. Like I said earlier, it's a baby that the country will get. We need a living baby. And there's no winning if the ANC is divided. The majority of the people of this country trust ANC, and it's a right decision that has been made.
All right, Mr. Mkhize, just stay on the line. We have Mlondi Mkhize, ANC Youth League spokesperson, joining us on the line. No relation to Wellington, Mlondi?
We are related somehow.
Maybe we are related. All Mkhizes, I would assume, are related.
Yeah, and it's in the black lineage. Somehow it's Bungo Fanana, we are related. Just talk to us about your experience at the policy conference that President Zuma emerged as having elevated himself above the warring factions and leaving an ANC that is united as his living legacy.
Well, he did like any other leader would do. When you sit at the helm of an organization, you lead obviously with a collective. And when you lead that collective, regardless of some of the things and that might happen to suggest in real terms or perceived that there are disagreement and disunity. But when you come and address it, whether as a chairperson of a province, as a president, you ought to rise above all of that. And that's what we've seen in President Jacob Zuma. And that's what we will always see in the president, because he is a person concerned highly about the unity of an organization that he leads. No leader wants to lead an organization, and the suggestion and innuendos are made that post his leadership, an organization just diminished, because it would suggest that its diminishing, it collapsing, would have been the actions and the conduct of the previous president in office. And that's why President Zuma would always, just like any other leader, would fight for the unity of the African National Congress.
How do you sustain it, though, when, as you're saying, that the champion of that particular call may not necessarily be an executive member, that is hands-on in ensuring that the unity is sustained?
Well, you see, unity in the organization is fought for and defended in many terrains. Part of it is to confront difficulties that are facing an organization. What could be those difficulties? It could be the leadership question. It could be a policy position. When an organization is at that level, having such issues, you ought not to find a victor. You need, as a leader, to bring everyone together so that everyone feels part and parcel of an organization, whether by identifying with policy or by identifying with leadership. Let's make an example. President Zuma, on closing the conference, makes a suggestion to the policy conference that, look, maybe as an organization you would need to start a discussion that says, when you have two comrades contesting for the leadership position that is at the highest office of an organization, you need not to have a situation where the one that loses gets chucked out. You need to have a situation where that person who loses gets to be incorporated in the officials, in the instance of the ANC. Because what would that do? That would say that regardless of the fact that who won, but both groupings or both factions or both lobby groups will still identify with an organization, because they will be saying, even if we did not get him or her to be a president, but at least he is a deputy, at least she is a deputy, at least she is part of the officials. As a result, it will be very difficult to then have a situation where you have got people that are bitter and where you have got people that feel that they are victors and should violate the rights of those that have lost on what they believed on.
Please say on the sorry, carry on, Blondie.
Yeah, secondly, just the last point to make is to say that, you see, in an organization, when you have people that were contesting, we equally understand that the history of an organization, President Zuma makes this very informed decision. This is out of a history of an organization where people, seemingly those that lose, seem not to find expression, whether in government or in structures of an organization, such that some of them are treated as if they are not members of an organization. That needs to come to an end. I think that branches of the African National Congress, including its leagues, should consider deeply. But we note the problematic element which some comrades are raising, that it would happen, it would create a situation where almost everyone becomes available for president simply because he or she knows that she is likely to be elected deputy. Yeah. That is the problem, but the greater good in this suggestion is there. It's present and glaring in all of us. So we need to consider it whilst equally noting some of the negative aspect of it.
All right, let's also get Jonas Magedi, political analyst, on the line. Good evening to you, and thanks for your patience. Are you of the view that Zuma came out stronger and reinforced himself as the leader of the people, as it were?
Yeah, well, to a large extent, I think he has really asserted himself as an influential leader, observing the developments of the policy conference. But I think there's one point here which I'm a bit worried I might be unpopular given the views of the panel, which is around whether the proposal on the two deputy presidents is a correct method to combat factionalism in the organization. For my view is that This signifies more than anything that the ANC has actually failed to combat factionalism, and by so doing now, it wants to accommodate a group that is likely to lose National Congress, which has the potential to identify itself outside the organization upon losing Congress. And therefore, the best way to deal with this is that you should accommodate it. But I think we should look a bit back on to the 2012 Mangaung conference when Kgalema Motlanthe lost the contest when he was contesting president. And just immediately after President Zuma gave a speech, he requested to share 2 or 3 words. And he appealed to members of the organization to unite and rally themselves behind the leadership that has been democratically elected. That is the sign of principled unity within the organization. You show as a leader that this is not about you holding a particular position in the organization, that you define yourself a member of the organization. For the crisis of factionalism in the organization does not emerge at the national leadership only, but in the provinces, in the districts, and at the branch level where contestation takes place and members of the organization lose provincial chairpersonship, lose regional chairpersonship. But you cannot then say, let's have a method of having to accommodate he who has lost within the very leadership that has been democratically elected. And this person does not have to stand a contest, must simply emerge as a deputy on the basis that he did not emerge as the president. Because the constitution of the African National Congress does not say contest for for president can only be amongst 2 people. You can have a situation where 3 people are contesting, for presidency of the organization. And what happens when 2 have lost? Would you then say both who have lost should then find themselves being deputies of the one who has really won? I think this, more than anything, to me, signifies that the ANC is really struggling with combating factionalism in the organization. But I think in closure, what I do not want to underestimate, however, is that over time, members of the African National Congress have cried about purging post-national congresses. That the leadership that takes over, normally under the coined winner takes all, you often find that officials, top officials and office bearers are past post-national congresses. And the inclusion of any other slate within the winning slate may actually be a form of reassuring those who have actually lost the Congress that there would not be a witch hunt, because there has been a bit of an inclusion of those who may have identified with you towards the National Congress.
All right. Sorry, Mr. Makhedi. I think let's just test your theories and see whether you emerge as popular with the panelists or not, that this is not the ideal way of dealing with factionalism. As a matter of fact, that it could be a counterproductive move rather from the president.
No, of course, but the intention here is not to have 2 structures in one structure. It's to have members of the ANC united in leadership, so that we don't find a situation where leaders are elected and there's a rupture of those who contested and did not emerge, together with branches that have supported them, regrouping against the leaders who need to focus on serving the people of this country for a period of 5 years. Now, there will be, from time to time, derailed from accomplishing their responsibility of serving the people of this country, because there will be a rupture or a regrouping within the very same organization that destabilizes their work from time to time.
Yeah, but so is it democratic, though? I mean, is it practical in having the losing faction, if you will, being included in leadership?
No, but the emphasis is that we must be united, so that those who relate with particular leaders who might have lost must still have confidence that the leaders that they've supported are part of the leadership collective, because the ANC itself is not led by individual. It believes in collective wisdom. Therefore, the collective must be able to identify, but in the main, we must not erode the culture of the ANC that says when leaders are elected, whether you had a particular view, we are compelled as members of the ANC, irrespective of what our view was, to support the leadership that is being elected.
All right, last word, Mlondi, from you. Just a reaction to Mr. Magedi, saying that this may backfire in the ANC as a gesture of unity.
No. I think we hold a different view on that subject. There are many things to consider here. Whilst I agree partially with him that unity ought to be organic in an organization, but we cannot treat an organization as a static thing. An organization is a living organism that has got different phases. Part of fostering unity is that sometimes you make it mechanical so that it can be organic. This is one point that must be made. Indeed, is correct. Comrade Mkuluwe, Comrade Khalima said those words. But what we must note is that it is not in most instances people that were nominated, that were believed in, that actually lead a breakaway and that actually become victims or are treated like people who don't belong to an organization. In most instances, it becomes supporters, and unfortunately, supporters are more than the person supported. Now, let's make an example. This is something that we've realized in the Youth League when we're dealing with organizational renewal in part of our NEC meetings. We have noted that in the Youth League, there seems to be a growing trend where you find that when you prepare for congresses, whether regional, provincial, or national congresses, you find that there is an increase and a decrease of old members in an organization. What does that do in an organization? It says that an organization trains, educates its members, but by virtue of not having been elected, those members are therefore neglected. When you neglect that member or that following, you are not only neglecting individuals, you are equally neglecting the investment that the movement has made on them.
All right, I get it. I get it, Mlondi. Thanks so much indeed. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but gentlemen, thanks indeed for your time as well. We had Jonas Magedi, political analyst, on the phone line, Mlondi Mkiza, ANC Youth League spokesperson, and Thabo Motle, ANC Youth League NEC member, Wellington Mkize from African Business Leaders Forum. Thanks indeed for your time. We take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.